Yesterday we learned about musical instruments on Shabbat, and we said that the main reason is because they had a fear that the rabbis had a fear that we might one instrument might break, especially ringing instruments, where you have to either tighten the cords or one of them could actually snap, like a violin or a guitar or a cello or anything like that. But in addition, we also talked about shofar on Shabbat and Rosh Hashanah, that specifically Shabbat, the rabbis forbade it, just like Megillat Esther, that somebody woke up late or couldn't come to shul, but now is feeling better, and they have a shofar either from inheritance or from for their bar mitzvah gift, something like that, and that they'll go in a place where there's no eruv and carry it in public domain. So again, these are not actual melachot, it's just a fence to prevent us from doing melachot. And so in addition to actual musical instruments, which we don't play on Shabbat, there's also certain fences that might lead to us picking up a musical instrument. So in our community, and Chama can, well, yes, we're going to have a jamming session on Friday, so very appropriate. So, the sage's prohibition of playing instruments includes dancing, clapping, and slapping one's thigh with one's hand to accompany singing out of concern, lest one play an instrument and fix it. So it's almost like a fence for a fence, because if the fence was to not fix a broken instrument, so now we have another one, which is it might lead to using a musical instrument, and so it's really should be considered what's called shvut shvut. And so Rabbi Melamed uses a different word, shinui, which we talked about many times before. So however one may clap with a shinui, such as using the back of one's hands, so um, one hand is regular and the other hand is with the back of the hand. By using a shinui, they are reminded that it is Shabbat and will not end up fixing an instrument. It would seem that very muted dancing, in which one's feet never leave the ground, at the same time is not included in the prohibited dancing. And so the prohibition applies specifically while singing, because there is a concern then that it will lead to playing instruments. In contrast, is if there is no singing, one may jump a bit for his enjoyment. Similarly, one may clap or to bang on a table in order to wake someone up. So on Simchas Torah, even if it's on Shabbat, there are people who do sing and dance, but because everybody is doing it at the same time, there's no fear that anybody will suddenly go and, oh, I forgot my guitar or something like that. So that's why it's allowed. And there's a song, I was trying to find the actual video before, but I couldn't find it. Well, I'll try to find the link and put it in the comments, called Al Yedei Nigunim U'Mechiat Kaf, which literally means through singing and clapping, and they also jump during the song. All of the harsh decrees become sweeter and better, and so that would be, if you're used to singing that or dancing to that with musical instruments, it would be appropriate to not do it, because you're in like this almost like a trance, and so that's why that's why I'm mentioning specifically that song, because it talks about nigunim, which means playing a musical instrument. In practice, many observant Jews dance, clap, and bang on a table when they sing on Shabbat. The poskim disagree about the legitimacy of this practice as follows. One approach that of many poskim is that this practice is mistaken, which means, you're not supposed to do it, so why are you doing it? Because we made a mistake. The only reason that the sages did not object is, like we saw in a different issue, that the prohibition is not stated explicitly in the Torah, so it is better that people transgress unknowingly rather than knowingly, what's called mutav shiyu shogegim b'mkom zidim, so making a mistake and not knowing that it's a mistake, as opposed to you tell somebody you're not to do something and they're already used to doing it, so they'll go and do it, and then they're already in the category of deliberately, which is more forbidden. However, if there's any possibility that people can be convinced to accept the proper halacha, we must teach them not to clap or dance on Shabbat in accordance with the rabbinic enactment. So I'll just tell you from many Shabbatot in Har Bracha, where Rav Melamed is the Rosh Yeshiva, they do sometimes dance for Kabbalat Shabbat, but only when it's not sunset yet. And even our Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Hertzfeld, when COVID started, that's how I actually got to be connected with him, was he would, in the middle of Chadodi, just burst out of the house with some of the kids. Some of the kids would continue dancing around the sofa, and he would go to the end of the sidewalk and dance because it was before Shkia. And there was another Shabbat where Shuli Lemmer graced us with his presence and did a sort of Karlibach Kabbalat Shabbat on Zoom. And of course, after sunset, there was no Zoom. So it was just a very amazing experience. And so that's probably like almost like a compromise. So, like I said, in Rav Melamed's only Yishuv and Yeshiva, they do dancing during Kabbalat Shabbat, but only if it's before sunset. However, if there's any possibility that people can be convinced, nevertheless, where the Rama is, nevertheless, on Simchat Torah, when there is a special mitzvah to rejoice and honor the Torah, like we said, even those who are normally stringent dance and clap, and that's a Ma'arik in the name of Rav Hai Gaon, so it goes back to the time of the Gaonim, which was more than 1,000 years ago. However, for other celebrations with a mitzvah component, such as weddings, they are not lenient, and so I think that there's maybe a mistake here. It's not weddings because we don't get married on Shabbat, as we actually learned in this very chapter. But maybe Sheva Brachos or something like that. So the 7 days that we rejoice, so you should not be dancing on Shabbat or doing these musical again, shvut to shvut. A second approach defends the leniency. After all, the reason behind the prohibition is a concern that people will end up fixing a musical instrument. Nowadays, when those who play an instrument do not know how to fix it usually, the enactment no longer applies, and one may dance and clap on Shabbat. That's a Tosfot. So already back in the time of the Rishonim, which was approximately 800 years ago or 700 years ago. Some do not accept this, maintaining that all the players know how to tune their instruments, tightening the guitar strings, harp strings, or the top of a drum, which is considered fixing an instrument. However, there is a different reason for it to be lenient. Some maintain that the rabbinic enactment was specifically relevant to the times of the sages, when people would take out instruments whenever there was dancing and clapping. Nowadays, when many people sing, dance, and clap without instruments, the enactment no longer applies. And so, again, that's another reason for leniency. The third approach notes that the great Hasidic masters of recent centuries, so Hasidism started with the Baal Shem Tov approximately 300 years ago, after the Chmelnytsky pogroms, focused on the value of music and dance to awaken people's hearts to cling to God joyfully, as opposed to just being always miserable and being afraid that I'm doing a mistake or a sin. Such dancing and clapping are considered true mitzvah needs, also for the mental capacity of people. Accordingly, just as there is a leniency for Simchat Torah, there should be a leniency for every Shabbat, not only when Simchat Torah is on Shabbat. Outside of Israel, of course, Simchat Torah can never be on Shabbat, but the 8th day, Shmini Atzeret in Israel, is they combine the more serious praying for the rain and Yizkor, etc. But it's also Simchat Torah. It would seem that even those who are lenient should not drum on the table on Shabbat. Such drumming is very similar to that of an actual drum, which all agree is forbidden, even for the sake of a mitzvah. Furthermore, the concern that people will take out the drum is a serious one today, when many are used to bringing drums, darbukas, which is the more Arabic country drums. It has actual skin of a goat or of a sheep on top of it. It's basically upside down pottery vase, but it's the pottery itself is completely hollow from both sides, and they just stretch the skin above it. And like when they sing, in contrast, when people are singing during prayer, a leader may drum with his hand on the bima, one leading the songs at the Shabbat table may also be lenient, again, for the sake of the mitzvah of Sudat Shabbat. So we'll stop here and open up for questions.